The United Earth Defense Force headquarters buzzed with activity. In the main conference room, 30 of humanity's best engineers sat around a large oval table, their eyes fixed on the holographic display floating above its center. Dr. Anna Thompson stood before them, her gray hair tied back neatly, pointing at specific sections of the Council's size restriction law. "Look here," she said, highlighting a particular phrase. "They specify continuous hull mass, but say nothing about connected sections or modular design." Her green eyes sparkled with the excitement of discovery. They were so focused on stopping us from building big ships that they forgot about basic engineering principles. Admiral Stevens, a tall man with dark skin and broad shoulders, leaned forward. "Are you suggesting what I think you are, Doctor?" "Yes, sir." Thompson switched the display to show a new design. "We build it in pieces. Each section stays within their size limits, but when combined..." She pressed a button, and the hologram showed multiple segments joining together to form a massive vessel. The room erupted in excited whispers. Chief Engineer Robert Martinez raised his hand. The power requirements would be enormous. No single reactor could power something that big. "Exactly." Thompson's smile grew wider. "So we don't use a single reactor. We use 20 of them, each powering its own section. The Council's law doesn't mention anything about power systems either." Admiral Stevens stood up, walking around the table slowly. "How long would it take to build something like this?" 2 years if we work in the open," Thompson replied. "But if we want to keep this quiet..." She looked around the room. "Maybe 3 to 4 years. We'll need to set up multiple construction sites, disguise our true intentions, and develop new assembly methods." The Admiral nodded. "The Council will have inspectors watching our shipyards." "Let them watch," Martine said, standing up. "We can build regular ships as cover. Meanwhile, we set up automated facilities in the asteroid belt. Small ones, nothing suspicious, each making different components that just happen to be compatible with each other." Thompson pulled up another display showing the resource requirements. "The biggest challenge will be keeping the material gathering quiet. We'll need massive amounts of rare metals and new composite materials." "I have an idea about that," a voice said from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Walker standing in the doorway. He walked to the table, straightening his diplomatic uniform. "The Council races are so convinced of their superiority that they barely pay attention to our mining operations. They think we're too primitive to hide anything from them." The ambassador reached out and expanded part of the hologram. "We can set up multiple small mining operations, each one looking like it's supplying normal shipyards. The Council's bureaucracy is so complex that if we file the right permits in different sectors, nobody will connect the dots." "How can you be sure?" Stevens asked. Walker smiled. "Because I've spent 10 years watching how they think. They're so old, so set in their ways, that they can't imagine someone doing things differently. They see us as children playing with toys." Thompson looked at the design floating above them. "This will be the largest ship ever built. We'll need a name for the project." "Titan's Forge," Martine suggested, "after the ancient smiths who made weapons for the gods." Admiral Stevens nodded slowly. "Titan's Forge it is." He looked around the room. "Everything said here stays in this room. As far as the galaxy knows, we're simply adapting to the Council's new rules like good, obedient humans." As the meeting ended, Thompson stayed behind, working on the designs. The hologram cast blue light across her face as she refined the connection points between segments. In her mind, she could already see it, humanity's greatest achievement taking shape in the darkness of space, piece by piece, hidden in plain sight. The Council had tried to clip humanity's wings. Instead, they had given them the perfect reason to soar higher than ever before. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter was a perfect hiding place. Thousands of rocks tumbled through the darkness, and among them, human ships moved quietly from one hidden shipyard to another. Chief Engineer Martinez stood at the viewport of Mining Station Delta, watching as automated mining drones carved into a massive nickel-iron asteroid. "Status report," he said into his comm unit. "Section 17 is ahead of schedule." The response crackled back. "Hull plates are being formed now. No council inspectors in this sector for the past month." Martinez smiled. They had spread the construction across 12 different facilities, each one looking like a simple mining operation from the outside. The council's inspectors had visited twice, and both times they only saw what they expected to see: primitive humans doing basic mining work. A light flashed on his console. "Sir," his assistant called, "we have a council ship approaching Beta Station." "Right on schedule," Martinez said. He pressed a button, sending out a coded signal. Within minutes, the giant hull segments being built at Beta Station disappeared behind massive dust screens. By the time the council ship arrived, they would see nothing but routine asteroid mining. In another part of the belt, Dr. Thompson supervised the testing of the connection mechanisms. She watched through reinforced windows as two massive hull sections, each just under the council's size limit, moved slowly together in space. "Power readings are stable," a technician reported. "Magnetic locks engaging. Connection successful." Thompson nodded. "Disengage and run it again. We need to be able to do this perfectly when the time comes." The sections separated smoothly, then began their careful dance again. They had practiced this thousands of times over the past 2 years. When the real assembly began, they would need to connect 20 massive sections in less than 72 hours before the council could react. Back on Earth, Ambassador Walker sat in his office, reviewing reports from the scattered construction sites. His desk was covered with permit applications, each one carefully designed to look routine and unimportant. He picked up a message from the council. Another inspection was scheduled for next week. "Perfect timing," he muttered. The inspectors would see exactly what they wanted to see: humans struggling to build ships within the new size restrictions. Meanwhile, the real work continued in secret. His computer beeped with an incoming message from Admiral Stevens. "The Council's intelligence service is getting suspicious about our mining operations. They're starting to notice the amount of materials we're extracting." Walker typed back quickly, "Leave that to me. I'll give them something else to worry about." The next day, Walker stood before the Council, making an official protest about trade restrictions. He spoke for hours about minor regulation details, boring most of the representatives into a stupor. None of them noticed that his complaints about mineral quotas were actually covering up the true scale of human mining operations. As Walker spoke, a massive cargo ship slipped quietly through the asteroid belt. Its holds were filled with reactor components, each one built to exact specifications. Like a puzzle piece waiting to be assembled, it would form part of the most powerful engine system ever created. In his private quarters that evening, Martinez looked at the overall project timeline. They were entering the final phase of construction. Soon, they would have all the pieces ready. The trick would be keeping everything hidden until the right moment. He opened a secure channel to Dr. Thompson. "How's the power integration testing going?" "Better than expected," she replied. Her hologram showed signs of exhaustion, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "Each reactor is performing at 110% of designed capacity. When we bring them all online together..." She paused. "Well, let's just say the Council has no idea what's coming." Martinez looked out at the asteroid belt, where their greatest achievement was taking shape in the darkness. Somewhere out there, scattered among the rocks and hidden from prying eyes, humanity's answer to the Council's restrictions waited to be assembled. Soon, very soon, they would show the galaxy what humans could really do. The pieces were almost ready. The countdown to revelation had begun. The emergency signal lit up the Galactic Council chamber in angry red pulses. High Chancellor Marcus rushed to his podium, his gray skin pale with worry. Emergency meetings were rare. This was only the third one in 50 years. "We have lost contact with the outer colony of Nexus 7, he announced to the gathering representatives. The chamber erupted in worried whispers. And that's not all. 4 other colonies have gone dark in the past week. Ambassador Walker sat forward in his chair, watching the faces of the other representatives. Fear. He saw fear in all of them. "Show us," someone called from the upper tiers. Marcus nodded and activated the main hologram. The image showed a massive ship, unlike anything they had seen before. It was organic-looking, like a giant insect made of black metal. As they watched, it approached a Council defense station. Energy weapons bounced harmlessly off its hull. "We're calling them the Swarm," Marcus said quietly. This footage was the last transmission from Nexus 7. Their ships are 3 times larger than our largest vessels. He paused, looking directly at Walker. 3 times larger than the Council's size restrictions allow. Walker kept his face neutral, but his mind was racing. He sent a quick encrypted message to Earth. "It's time." The next footage showed a fleet of Council ships engaging a single Swarm vessel. The Council ships looked like toys next to it. Their weapons barely scratched its surface. The Swarm ship's response was devastating. Green energy beams cut through the Council ships like paper. "How many colonies have we lost?" asked the Arcturian representative, his crystal body dimming with distress. 7 as of this morning, Marcus replied. "Our ships are too small to carry weapons powerful enough to harm them. We can't get close enough to do significant damage without being destroyed." Walker stood up. All eyes turned to him. "The Council's size restrictions have left us defenseless," he said clearly. "We need to act now, before we lose more worlds." "And what would humans know about fighting such threats?" The Dorsian representative huffed, releasing angry clouds of methane. "Your species barely has space travel." Before Walker could respond, another emergency signal flashed. The hologram showed 3 Swarm ships approaching one of the largest Council worlds, home to billions. "They're attacking Beta Centauri," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "Our largest fleet is assembled there, but—" He didn't need to finish. They all knew their ships were too small to stop the threat. Walker's communicator buzzed. He read the message and allowed himself a small smile. After 3 years of secret work, everything was ready. He stood again. "The human government offers its assistance," he said formally. Marcus looked at him with all 4 eyes. "What assistance could you possibly offer? Your ships are bound by the same restrictions as ours." "Are they?" Walker asked quietly. He pressed a button on his communicator. The chamber's main hologram switched to a new feed. The image showed space around Wolf 359, just outside Council space. Massive ship segments were moving into position. Each piece was just within the Council's size limits. But as they watched, the segments began joining together. "What is this?" Marcus demanded. "You restricted continuous hull mass," Walker replied calmly. "You never said anything about modular construction. Allow me to introduce humanity's answer to your restrictions. And now, it seems, to the Swarm threat as well." The chamber watched in stunned silence as the segments continued to join. Even incomplete, the ship was already larger than anything the Council had ever built, and it was only growing bigger. "How long?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How long have you been building this?" 3 years, Walker replied. "Ever since your restrictions went into effect. We knew someday we'd need a ship bigger than your laws allowed. We just didn't know it would be so soon." As if to emphasize his words, another emergency signal flashed. More colonies had gone dark. The Swarm was coming. But now, humanity was ready to reveal its secret weapon. The only question was, would it be enough? Admiral Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of the command module, watching as history unfolded through the reinforced windows. Around her ship, massive segments of the greatest vessel ever built moved slowly into position. Each piece was a triumph of engineering, and together they would become something unprecedented. "Section 7 in position," reported the tactical officer. "Magnetic locks engaging. Connection successful." Parker nodded, checking the massive holographic display that showed the entire assembly process. They had practiced this thousands of times in simulation. Now they had to do it for real, with the whole galaxy watching. "Time check," she called out. 32 hours since assembly began," came the response. "We're ahead of schedule." In the Galactic Council chamber, the representatives had been watching for over a day as the humans revealed the true scale of their project. The central hologram showed the massive ship taking shape, piece by piece. High Chancellor Marcus couldn't hide his amazement. The engineering required. How did we miss this? Ambassador Walker stood beside him, allowing himself to smile. You saw what you expected to see. Small mining operations, routine shipyard work, nothing special. He paused as another massive section moved into place. We learned long ago that the best place to hide something is in plain sight. Back at Wolf 359, Dr. Thompson supervised the power core integration from her control station. 20 reactors, each powerful enough to run a small city, had to work in perfect harmony. "Reactors 13 through 16 online," she reported. "Power flow is stable. Beginning synchronization." The ship was more than just big. Each section contained technology that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Armor plates that could repair themselves, weapons designed to punch through any known defense, and at its heart, a power system that would make it the most formidable vessel ever created. "Hull Section 12 secured," the tactical officer announced. "Beginning final structural integrity checks." Parker watched as the last major pieces moved into position. The ship was taking its final form, a massive arrowhead shape that dwarfed everything around it. At 4 times the size of anything the Council had ever built, it was a testament to human determination and ingenuity. In the Council chamber, Marcus turned to Walker. "Does it have a name?" "Him is Prometheus," Walker replied. In human mythology, Prometheus gave fire to humanity against the gods' wishes. It seemed fitting. The final hours of assembly were tense. Every connection had to be perfect. The smallest misalignment could compromise the entire structure. But the years of preparation paid off. Each piece fit exactly as planned. "Final section in position," Thompson reported. "Beginning power-up sequence." Parker felt the deck vibrate slightly as the massive reactors synchronized. Lights came on throughout the enormous vessel, section by section. Status reports flooded in from every department. "All systems nominal," the engineering officer reported. "She's ready, Admiral." Parker stood and straightened her uniform. "Send word to Earth Command. The HMS Prometheus is operational." The news spread quickly through the Council chamber. The human ship was complete, and not a moment too soon. Reports were coming in of more swarm attacks on the outer colonies. "Now what?" Marcus asked Walker, watching as the massive ship's engines glowed to life. "Now," Walker replied, "we show you what humanity can really do." He looked at the tactical display showing the swarms advance. "We didn't build this ship to follow your rules. We built it to save lives." The HMS Prometheus moved forward, its massive form casting shadows on nearby ships. It was humanity's answer to both the Council's restrictions and the swarm's threat. 3 years of secret work, countless hours of preparation, and the combined effort of thousands had created something unprecedented. The time for hiding was over. The time for action had begun. The HMS Prometheus dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the outer rim. 3 swarm ships were attacking the colony world of New Eden, their black hulls reflecting no light. Admiral Parker stood at the command center, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Launch fighter squadrons," she ordered. The massive ship had internal hangars bigger than most Council vessels. From these bays, hundreds of human fighters poured out like angry bees from a hive. "Enemy ships detecting our presence," the tactical officer reported. "They're turning to engage." Parker nodded. This was the moment of truth. All their planning, all their secret work, would be tested in the next few minutes. "Main weapons charge," weapons control announced. All 20 reactor cores at full power. The swarm ships moved with surprising speed for their size. Green energy beams lashed out, striking the Prometheus's shields. The massive human ship shuddered slightly, but held firm. "Shields at 92%, reported the defense officer. "The multi-layer defense is working exactly as Dr. Thompson designed." Parker allowed herself a small smile. The Council's small ships couldn't stand up to swarm weapons, but the Prometheus's size allowed for shield systems that were meters thick. "Target the lead ship," she commanded. "All main batteries, fire when ready." The Prometheus's massive gun batteries came to life. Each one was powered by its own reactor, allowing for unprecedented energy discharge. Blue beams of focused plasma struck the lead swarm ship, punching through its organic metal hull. In the Galactic Council chamber, representatives watched the battle through long-range sensors. High Chancellor Marcus couldn't hide his amazement as the human vessel fought 3 swarm ships simultaneously. "Impossible," whispered the Dorjan representative. "Their weapons, their shields." Ambassador Walker stood quietly, watching the battle unfold. "This is why we built her so big," he said simply. "Sometimes, size does matter." Back at the battle, the Prometheus's fighter squadron swarmed around the alien vessels, targeting weak points that the main ship's sensors had identified. The swarm ships struggled to track the smaller craft while defending against the Prometheus's main weapons. "Enemy Ship 1 showing critical damage," Tactical reported. "Their hull is breaking apart." The lead swarm ship split in 2, secondary explosions rippling along its length. The other 2 ships moved closer together, combining their firepower. "Shields at 67%, the defense officer called out. "Port side taking heavy fire." Parker gripped her command rail. "Bring us about. Show them our reinforced bow. Engineering, divert power to forward shields." The Prometheus turned with surprising grace for its size. Its arrow-shaped front end faced the swarm ships, allowing its heaviest armor and shields to absorb their attack. "All forward batteries, continuous fire," Parker ordered. "Launch second fighter wave. Target their weapon emplacements." The space around them lit up with weapons fire. The Prometheus's massive banks of guns fired in rolling sequences, never letting up. Where Council ships had to wait between shots to recharge, the human vessel's multiple reactor cores provided constant power. One of the swarm ships suddenly veered off, trailing debris. The last one tried to retreat, but the human fighters swarmed around it, disabling its engines with precision strikes. "Enemy vessels neutralized," Tactical announced. "Colony is secure." A cheer went up from the bridge crew. The Prometheus had done it. Humanity's greatest engineering achievement had proven itself in battle. In the council chamber, Marcus turned to Walker. "Your ship, it's more than we ever imagined possible." Walker nodded. "We had 3 years to plan, build, and think bigger than the rules allowed. Sometimes restrictions don't restrict. They inspire." The Prometheus moved into orbit around New Eden, its massive form casting a shadow on the planet below. It was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of what humanity could achieve when pushed into a corner. And somewhere out in space, more swarm ships were coming. But now, humanity was ready. 2 weeks after the Battle of the Rim, the Galactic Council chamber was packed. Representatives from all 200 member races had gathered for this historic session. The central hologram showed the HMS Prometheus in orbit around New Eden, where it had successfully defended against 3 more swarm attacks. Ambassador Walker stood at the main podium, a position usually reserved for High Chancellor Marcus. The chamber was silent, waiting for his words. 3 years ago, Walker began, this council passed laws to limit our growth. You saw us as children playing with dangerous toys. He paused, looking around the chamber. Those laws forced us to think differently, to innovate, and because of that, we were ready when the swarm came. The hologram changed to show footage from the recent battles. The Prometheus dwarfed the swarm ships, its weapons tearing through their supposedly invincible hulls. In the past 2 weeks, Walker continued, the Prometheus has destroyed or driven off 15 swarm vessels. No more colonies have been lost. No more lives have been sacrificed to these invaders. High Chancellor Marcus stood. The Council acknowledges that the size restrictions were short-sighted. They will be lifted immediately. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Council rarely admitted mistakes. Furthermore, Marcus added, in recognition of humanity's contribution to galactic security, Earth will be granted a permanent seat on the Defense Committee. Admiral Parker, standing at the back of the chamber in her formal uniform, smiled slightly. The Prometheus had done more than win battles. It had won humanity a voice in galactic affairs. Dr. Thompson stood next to her, watching as Walker continued his speech. "Did you ever think," she whispered, "that our ship would change everything like this?" Parker shook her head. "I just wanted to build something that would protect us. Changing galactic politics was a bonus." At the podium, Walker was showing designs for new ships. "We're already sharing our modular construction techniques with Council engineers. Together, we can build a fleet capable of defending against any threat." The Arcturian representative's crystal body glowed with approval. "Your species has shown us that sometimes the best solutions come from working around restrictions rather than simply accepting them." More than that, the Dorjan representative added, releasing pleased clouds of methane. "You've shown us that the youngest races might have the most to teach." Walker nodded. The Prometheus was built in secret, but its legacy will be one of openness and cooperation. Humanity is ready to take its place among the great races of the galaxy. In orbit around New Eden, the massive ship continued its patrol. Its very existence had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. But more importantly, it had shown what was possible when innovation and determination combined. "There will be more threats," Walker concluded, "more challenges that require us to think beyond traditional boundaries. But now we face them together, as equals." The council session ended with a standing ovation, a human tradition that the other races had adopted for the occasion. As the representatives filed out, Marcus approached Walker. "You knew," the High Chancellor said quietly. "When we passed those restrictions, you already knew how you would overcome them." Walker smiled. "We didn't know about the swarm. But we knew that someday, humanity would need to prove itself. The restrictions just gave us a puzzle to solve. And solve it you did." Marcus extended his hand in the human gesture of respect he had learned. "Welcome to the Defense Committee, Ambassador." As they shook hands, news came in from the outer colonies. Another swarm fleet had been detected, larger than before. But this time, the galaxy was ready. The Prometheus had shown the way, and more ships would follow. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through brute force, but through ingenuity and determination. The age of restrictions was over. A new era of cooperation and innovation had begun. And somewhere in the shipyards of Earth, engineers were already drawing up plans for something even bigger.